folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Let me turn this music down. It's not that loud yet, but it will get louder, so don't want to drown myself out. Well, welcome back. I've been away for a few days, and want to start out this session with saying I'll probably be away for most days for a while. I've undertaken to start writing another book, and that's going to be taking up most of my energy for, well, maybe in the next 2 weeks or so. I tend to write about a chapter or two a day. At any rate, while I'm doing that, I'll try to once in a while do a podcast just to keep this thing alive and see if we get some more souls coming in to tune in. I've got a list of subjects that I've been having on the back burner that I wanted to talk about. Today's session we're going to call Near-Death Experiences. What's really going on? Artwork I owe to Monty Python's. Let's see, I think this one's from The Holy Grail. Bring out your dead. I'm not quite dead yet. Good way to get into the subject, I guess. Okay, so for those of you who may not be familiar with the term or any of this, a near-death experience is a range of spiritual experience, largely spiritual, that accompanies the incidence of someone having a very serious illness or accident or something that caused them to go into a coma, and experiencing a paranormal experience, which is often very profound and life-changing often. It also can come about as a result of extreme spiritual practice. This is one of the reasons why many spiritual traditions have fasting, have deep meditation, have other ceremonies which consume substances which induce a state similar to death. In fact, you can have a near-death experience as a result of a psychedelic trip. Okay, so that's sort of the range of things that can cause it. I think maybe it might be interesting to mention at this time that it is also something that can be induced and directed, in fact. In such a state, the mind is highly suggestible. In fact, you can get into this state through hypnosis as well. And this is, in fact, well, I guess we better turn this down a little more. We're getting this a little bit more music than we need at this point. For those who are wondering what the background music is today, it's Bartok, music for strings, percussion, and celeste, one of the great works of modern classical music. Yeah, so in fact, near-death experiences can be and are used as part of psychological programming operations like MK Ultra. They can become part of interrogation mechanisms for prisoners of war, and all sorts of dark things that are done semi-spiritually by very materialistic people who understand enough about how the spirit works to be able to use and abuse it. So this is a broader topic than you may have thought about before. Okay, so what are some of the common factors of a near-death experience, and what do they signify? One of the commonalities of a near-death experience happens in the beginning of it. There is often a sense of an out-of-body experience, a sense of, oh, I'm still conscious. My body is sitting here. I can even look at it from outside it and see, oh, okay, that's my body. And there's a little bit of a discombobulation at that point. And for some people, that's basically all they get of a near-death experience, is seeing, oh, I'm out of my body. I'm watching my body, and then the body returns, and the experience is over, and it's like, wow, that was weird. And it might give that person pause for a moment, but they will think, well, okay, it was just the effects of whatever medication I was given, or I was just hallucinating, or that kind of a near-death experience is pretty easy to write off. But this is a commonality, and you'll hear a lot of people report having out-of-body experiences. I've had out-of-body experiences myself, not near death, even waking and breathing and living. It used to be a really common occurrence for me when I was a child. At any rate, that's one of the commonalities. Not necessarily always. And this is one of the things that I think needs to be pointed out in talking about near-death experiences, is if you go study these things, you will see a wide range of reports of what goes on. And that range widens the further you go into the experience. And we'll be talking about that. Okay, generally the next phase involves experiencing something like a tunnel, or maybe a bright light that one feels attracted to going into the tunnel, or attracted to this light. And some will describe this as not only a visual experience, but a sensory experience, and will say that that light or that tunnel had a certain attractiveness, which some will identify as love, infinite connection. And some people, that's all they get of the experience, and they say, wow, I saw God. Because this infinite must be something like God. The tunnel experiencers, well, that's generally not God, but, like it could be what an atheist would imagine is a portal to another dimension, another universe, or something like that. And actually, that's probably closer to what is actually being experienced. So the truth of that phase of a near-death experience is that what you are witnessing is the interface between two universes, okay, or more universes. Basically, what happens as you approach this death state is your soul and its field, the Mikado field, it's called, will attract the interest of other universes who would like to work with your soul. This is why Christians, when they have near-death experiences, will report talking to Christ, talking to God, talking to both, talking to the Virgin Mary, their favorite saint, their holy grandma, who was like their model of Christian virtue, or maybe even a priest that they used to know. Can vary quite a bit. Muslims have their own experience here and will interpret it in their own way. People of other beliefs will interpret it differently. People of no beliefs will at this point start imagining that, well, maybe I should believe something. As the old saying goes, there are few atheists in foxholes. When you're near death, or when you're sensing that you are in the death process, you're more open to the idea that there might be something beyond death. Now, the thing you need to know about all this is life and death are choices. When we choose to incarnate, when we choose to have a life, that's us in one of these heavens or hells being given an opportunity to try a physical incarnation. Now, we're not given infinite choice in these opportunities. It depends on who your spirit guides are, who's counseling you on the other side, and what their agenda is versus your agenda. And it's kind of like a job interview. Well, you could send you out to these set of parents, and you could have a life in this kind of general time frame and milieu. Or we've got this other one here. This might be a good fit, and talk it over. And you can say, nah, I don't think I want to try just yet, and that's how it goes. On the other side, when you die, there's kind of the same process that goes on. What's also in play is that you've got different heavens, different universes, who worship different gods, who have different directors, wanting to pull you into their 12-step program. At least the hells are more like that. That's what a hell is like. It's basically a customized 12-step program for somebody that shares the same addictions, the same sins as you. They would be in the best position to know what you need to get out of that jail. So hell is not such a bad place. It's actually very constructive for most souls. Heavens are kind of the same thing, because no soul is perfect. Not even God. Least of all God. There are some gods and goddesses that think they are perfect, and they run very tight ships in their universes. And they will pretend to be God, because they like to have that feeling of power that they get from being slavishly worshipped by whoever they can attract to their heaven or hell. And, if that's who you want to worship, if that's who you want to call God, that's what you get. Some souls need to have authoritarian direction, telling them what to do, when to do, how to do it. There are gods of Orwellian universes that run their heaven or their hell like that. And they can show you whatever they want. They can tell you whatever they want. They can pretend to be whoever they want. Give you any kind of experience you can imagine. And for those of you that have begun seeing what is possible with deep fakes, you can imagine quite a bit. And that's essentially how the human creators of near-death experiences work. And yes, they can induce these experiences through programming, through very specific programming that puts you into a state where you are receptive to this. It's basically like if you've ever seen a hypnotist working that's really good at his stuff, they know how to plant a control word. And during the deep hypnosis, they will say, well, when you hear blah, 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 I want you to go back into this state, or I want you to start barking like a dog. And If you've watched a good hypnotist at work, that's what happens. And in fact, it will even happen to folks in the audience. I've been a victim of that kind of programming myself. So I know how it works, and I know it does work, or can work. It doesn't work always. This is the choice aspect. You can resist programming. You can resist what's going on in the near-death experience. And if you resist strongly enough, you will be able to go to another experience. Either come back to your own body, or the experience may change. And you will hear some people's near-death experiences start with a certain narrative and then suddenly shift to something else. This is what's going on there. They are basically choosing not to believe in the experience they're being fed, and grabbing at another, or letting another grab them. Because I can tell you that all experience in the multiverse is virtual. It's all virtual reality. What is real is the soul, the field of the soul, the Merkaba, and the interactions between the Merkabas of many souls, either as a collective or separate things. And this is how all of physical reality gets manifested. All of spiritual reality gets manifested. It's just a different set of rules that govern the physical universe, our physical manifestations, and the spiritual manifestations, or the spiritual experiences we have. Okay, so then after this bright light or whatever gets you to a certain place, typically the next part of it is meeting some guide who kind of shows you the ropes effectively. Not always. Sometimes it's self-directed, and you just, well, I was suddenly here and I saw this and I saw that and I decided to go this way or that way. Other times you'll get a guide and they'll say, oh, welcome to blah blah blah. I'll kind of show you around, and there's a lot of different variations of that story. And that is what you're getting, is a story. This is how higher consciousness spirits, souls, work on lower consciousness souls. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Many times it is for what they think is your own good. They've had you coming back to that heaven or hell for a while, and they think they know you pretty well, and they guide you through what they feel like is going to be the most useful spiritual experience to get you onto what they feel like is going to be a useful physical experience in your next incarnation. Now, what's not obvious is something that I need to tell you that is maybe going to blow your mind a little bit. Because, in fact, many of these near-death experiences are real death experiences. And what's actually happening is that you're going through this process and so forth, and they're telling you, you know, well, I'm showing you heaven and stuff like that. Or maybe they show you hell, and they say, well, we really need you to come back. You know, you might be just, I want to go. No, you know what? We'd really like you to come back and continue living that life. Or they will just send you back. But coming back, you may not be the same person that left. Because this is what happens when we move between universes. There are many parallel universes. And when you go to a near-death experience, it may be with the idea that, okay, we're going to move you to another physical reality, a parallel universe. But we need to do a little bit of reprogramming first to send you there, or to send you back. And you don't know when you come back if you're coming back to the same universe you left. It may be a very similar one, but it may be a parallel one. And there are many, many parallel universes. Basically, every save game of the prime timeline, sort of God's dream universe, if you will, the best of all possible universes so far, every save point along that prime timeline becomes a starting point that other gods and goddesses can specialize in, uses training vehicles for people that worship them. So, if you really, really liked when Christianity was being persecuted and not the state religion, like the early Christian period, and you feel like when I become a god, that's where I want to do my work. You may start going to a Christian heaven or hell that's set in that universe and planning for that universe, and they guide you to lives that sort of take you back in time to that time where you felt like you were learning, you would have learned more, you would have enjoyed more, and you'll get that experience, and you'll learn through that experience, and you may stay there, and you may eventually become one of the guides, one of the Clarences, the lower level or higher level angels of that alternate heaven. Or you may, become permanently enmeshed in that time period and keep coming back for life after life after life in your favorite time. These are choices that you can make, and there's not really wrong choices. They all serve to educate and inform and allow us to explore our individual nature in the context of the nature of other souls that we choose to be around. This is how it all works. You do need to be aware, though, that you can't trust everybody. Your guides have their own agenda, and they will lie to you. They will cheat you to get what they want. Not all of them, of course. And this is why you need to be aware of karma. Because karma affects all souls. If you commit karmic sin, you lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, use, abuse other souls for your own ends and against their will, against their best interests, which you don't really know. So it's not easy to avoid karma. It gets easier the more conscious you become, and that's why we go through physical incarnations until we're ready for spiritual incarnations, and we go through spiritual and physical incarnations until we're ready to train as a god. That's what you have to go through if you want to be a god, if you want to sit in the same council room with the first creator. You've got to damn sure be worthy of sitting on the council. You don't get there through a diversity hiring program. You got to earn it. Heaven is a republic, a constitutional republic, not a democracy, not an autocracy, not a dictatorship, not an oligarchy. It makes you work for it. And even God has worked for his position and had to re-earn it every time a major rule set was changed. That's what's been going on with the whole Messiah thing. And everybody does that. Everybody gets a chance to be a god of their own creation. Now, That doesn't mean you get to be God, because there's already a multiverse. There's already all these universes in existence. You don't get to be the leader of all those. You don't get to go kick a god out of their universe. You might get to replace them at some point if they decide, I don't want to be the god of war anymore. I want to go be the god of fly fishing for a change. And that's maybe a point where Ares got to, or Mars. This is gods get choices too. They get tired of their roles, and they get to try for a different godhood. They got to earn it just like everybody else. They got to go incarnate. They got to go through physical incarnations to earn the right to spiritual incarnations in the universe of similarly minded gods and goddesses. And then they've got to go re-earn their godhood and show why they should be the god of war and not just the god of amphibious warfare or naval warfare. One of my purported ancestors was Martin Harputson Tromp, who was quoted in the encyclopedia as being the father of modern naval tactics. So maybe he's a god somewhere in the war department of heaven, still being worshipped by people who like to fight from ships or with ships. Who knows? This is the way things work. At any rate, what I need to caution you against is there's kind of a sense that, there's a lot of programs you can watch on YouTube or see on various documentary channels that kind of are glorifying or making a big deal of near-death experiences. And people want to, you want to share this afterward, especially if you think you're going to get money for it, or you're going to get notoriety. You might be even tempted to embellish it a bit, or to tailor your story to fit the narrative that a producer or director wants. And this is another danger you have to watch out for in the spiritual world, as there will be people that will have a near-death experience and will play it up to be a much bigger thing than it actually is. They may even turn it into the whole reason for their existence. Oh, Isis spoke to me and told me that I was her reincarnation, or I could channel her now, and I should speak to the world and tell them, this grand vision of the great goddess, blah, 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 blah. And there are many, many spiritual grifters out there who have parlayed a near-death experience, psychedelic experience, or whatever, something of a spiritual nature, into a big grift, a big con. You need to watch out for those folks too, because their suggestions, if you believe their religion, it can attract you to their heaven or hell. And that's why they get these messages. That's why they're encouraged to go out and preach. They're encouraged to go out and teach. And sometimes that's for their good or the good of the people that they're going to convince. And sometimes it's because they're being given a bill of lies. They're being tempted by the adversary. And if you think the devil only shows up with horns on his head and fiery and blah, 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 and makes you sign contracts for what you get, that's bullshit. There are entities that work that way. The more legalistic ones, they actually are doing closer to what God would like them to do based on their experience. They're going about their business honestly. The honest devil is much better than a dishonest demon or demoness. And very few of the newer gods and goddesses um, are working very honestly. Newbies tend to make the most mistakes, and newbie gods and goddesses make a lot of mistakes. They disrespect karma. They think they know better than God. In fact, they may not even believe in karma yet. Oh, God. They tell there's this karma thing and there's this God entity, but I've never met him. I've never seen him. I don't believe in them. I think we're all gods. And you will hear that. You will hear all sorts of strange stories from people that you better not believe. Because they could be lying, or they could be misled by a liar. So, my advice when you have a near-death experience is process it well before you take any action. Look at why you had it, how you had it, how it's going to affect the life that you have, and if you feel called to make major changes, where those changes are going to lead. Maybe you're motivated to give up an addiction, or to renew an old romance, or to start a new career. That's not always an improvement. It may just lead to new and worse addictions. And believe me, one of the worst addictions you can have is addiction to power. There's a reason they say power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why we make it so hard to become a god. Because there's a lot of power involved when you're like the leader of the whole universe, for better or worse. And you've got to earn that. Dark gods earn their place. Why? Why do you think you would let a bad soul become a god or goddess? You ask. Who better to train other souls to better behavior? Who better to attract other souls that are just as dark, that are going to give them the most trouble in their universe? You see where this is going? It's all punishment fits the crime kind of stuff. Wonderful synchronicity just showed up for me that I'll recommend. A really good set of fun entertainment, classic entertainment, to add to your repertoire and start broadening your horizons from all the crap, satanic crap that you're filled with these days. Gilbert and Sullivan. This is from the Mikado, which may get canceled at some point because it's a play about Japan in the Victorian era, and kind of pokes a little bit of fun at the Japanese culture and a little bit of fun at the sort of British Empire's view of that culture. So it can be played a lot of ways. It's a wonderful play, wonderful musical, actually light opera, I think, as you would classify it. But there's a character here who's the Mikado himself, the leader. My object all sublime, I will achieve in time to make the punishment fit the crime, the punishment fit the crime. And this is a very funny song, because the whole thing about the story is that the Mikado is upset because nobody has been beheaded. And since he made it a crime to kiss in public, and he's appointed a Lord High Executioner for this crime, but the Lord High Executioner actually has committed the crime. He kissed somebody and doesn't want to cut his own head off. Anyway, this is real comedy, folks, and a divine comedy about death that makes light of it. And maybe that's why this came up to me. Watch it. watch Monty Python. Lighten up about death, because it's not the end. It's a beginning. Doesn't mean it's not important. Doesn't mean you don't want to cling to this life, because you may never get the kind of experiences you're about to get for a long, long time. If you're in the point of life where you don't feel like you've accomplished what you set out to do with your life, you feel this hidden longing, something that you missed, a mission that, I know I was put here for some reason. Well, you probably were. It just hasn't happened yet. So hang around and see when you feel the call. Just be aware that the missions you are given, the calls you are given, could be given by somebody who wants to use you and abuse you. And this is maybe hearkening back to projects like MK Ultra of the CIA, and every other major power has done this. They have delved into these occult spiritual areas of human experience and have figured out how to do some of this stuff irresponsibly, without understanding or appreciating that karma is a real thing. God is real. Not almighty, all-powerful real, but a very influential soul who is going to be fully awake pretty soon and not needing to go incarnate again for a long time. Going to be staying up in heaven, directing things from that side for a while. And, well, just imagine how impatient a director might be if his cast has kept him in the dark for literally millions of years. God's going to be somewhat pissed. And he's going to have a lot of folks on his team that are rather pissed too. And they're not going to be putting up with a whole lot of shit for much longer. And that is the truth of the event that's coming. You're all going to die. That was always going to be true. It's a matter of when and how, and it's coming. And the big change that's coming is that what you're going to get as a real death experience, what people have been getting as near-death experiences, has been changing. The heavens are changing. The game is changing because the Gaia Experiment, the reason humanity was created, is finished. It was a test. It was a test of a grand social engineering experiment. An experiment that God believed in so much that he gave himself, not his only son, himself, to incarnate again and again and again until the porridge was just right. Till it looked like, well, karma's done her job. She and the other children, the most senior of which I use the names Lucifer and Lilith for. They had other names. They will have more names. Those aren't exclusive, but those are the names that are sort of commemorated in Christian tradition, and I think most of the people that are going to watch this are Christian or Jewish or even Muslim, or come from a Judeo-Christian background, can relate to those names. If you're a Hindu and you feel slighted, you can think of God as Brahma. Actually, Brahma is a good name for God, because God's last non-human incarnation, the last non-human Christ, was a bull. Half bull, half man, actually. A centaur. Wait a minute, you say a centaur? I thought that was half horse. It would have been a centhippus, you fools. A centaur, half bull, half man. One of many species that pooled their DNA together to create a new version of humanity that was better than the version that the reptilians created, that started the Lemurian culture, the culture that venerated the Nagas, the culture that created the Hindu tradition, which didn't originate in India. In fact, it originated, right here, very near where I'm sitting here talking to you, on the island of Java. That's actually where the center of the first human experiment happened. And as some people have posited, it was originally an attempt by the reptilian species to colonize this world with a slave race that was a little bit smarter than the hominids that were here. That's what they thought they were doing. That's why they mixed some of their prize DNA. The reptilians were very good at mixing DNA, the masters of it, and making the first Homo sapiens, the ancestor race of Asia. Now we know that there was a later ancestor race, the Aryan race. That's where a lot of this racial tension comes from. The Aryans were created by the Elohim, the kind of leader of the pantheistic species, mixtures of all sorts of creatures. This is why ancient mythology shows therianthropic creatures, half fish, half man, half bird, half man, half bull, half man, half cat, half man. Multiple species mixed together, chimeras. There was a time in this fair land when diversity of that kind was the norm, was accepted. When they got along in more or less peaceful coexistence. Too peaceful. In some cases, they kind of just got lazy. Stuck to their own little city-state, their own god, and the fawning lower people worshippers, the slaves and the ass-kissers. And it got just a little bit too comfortable. And creation wasn't really happening anymore. This planet was not doing what it was supposed to do for this experiment. The whole reason that the planet was created, the whole reason the solar system was created, the whole reason all of the chosen species got created. That wasn't working. And that's why one of the great resets had to happen. That actually wasn't the flood. That was before the flood. That was one that's not very well remembered. Most of the memory of that era is 200 or 400 feet, maybe even more, beneath sea level, because that's where most of civilization was at that time. And there's only a handful of sites that are finally being excavated that go back that far. One of them is only about roughly 50, 60 kilometers away from me, Gunung Padang, on the island of Java, which has only recently been discovered. They thought was just another mountain, another volcanic mountain in the midst of many of them. Are now discovering that it contains layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of construction of some kind of pyramidal structure. It's going to be interesting to see whether the government lets more excavations happen here, whether they try to suppress it, as those in the Middle East have suppressed similar discoveries there, in the Americas, in Europe, in Russia, China, tried to use it for their own cultural misappropriation, their own cult Marxism, hide the truth or disguise it as a convenient truth to serve their political agenda, their religious agenda. Anyway, we kind of went a little far off field on this one, but maybe if you came here for near-deathing, you might be tempted to catch another episode or two. Or if you really like what I'm talking about, you want to hear more of it, you want to get deep in it quick, well, why don't you volunteer to be a proofreader for my book? One of the early reviewers. I could use some help. Go read my 2 other books. Catch all of these other episodes here. There's a lot to be learned from this crazy Dutchman living in Indonesia now. I think I'm going to leave it there. Like, share, subscribe, get involved in any way you want. Till next time, happy karma.